My name is Ava Collins. And for most of my life, I bent over backward trying to earn love that should have been freely given. It started when I was 17. That's when the real unraveling began, when my parents turned their backs on me at the time I needed them most. There was no shouting, no dramatic betrayal. Just a slow, cold withdrawal. A disappointment they never fully voiced but always made me feel. And when I left home that fall to start college, I already knew that the distance wouldn't just be physical. They didn't come to visit. Barely called. And when they did, it always ended with some passive-aggressive comment that made it clear I had failed to live up to their standards. The final break came years later, after years of strained interactions and forced holidays, when I discovered just how manipulative they could be. They'd tried to sabotage my relationship with my brother, Michael, who had always been my lifeline. They told him lies, twisted our words, and guilt-tripped him into siding with them. It worked for a while. We drifted apart, and I felt more alone than ever. But when Michael reached out again, after the birth of his daughter Lily, we found each other all over again. And this time, I wasn't letting him go. But of course, reconnecting with Michael didn't come without consequences. Our parents were furious. Enraged that we were cutting them out, that we were ungrateful, as if their history of emotional neglect didn't exist. Things escalated quickly. Letters became phone calls. Calls became unannounced visits. Threats. Yelling. Guilt trips that felt like they were scripted from a soap opera. That's when I got a lawyer. Marcus. Calm, steady, brilliant. He helped Michael and me file restraining orders. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. They waited. Quiet. Calculating. Then one day, they cornered me at a coffee shop near my apartment. I don't even know how they knew I'd be there, probably some neighbor or old friend who still believed their lies. I almost walked out the moment I saw them, but something in me, some flicker of old fear mixed with a new flame of anger, kept me rooted. My mom's eyes were red-rimmed, already filled with tears. My father sat stiffly, like he was doing a job he hated but couldn't back out of. "You're really going through with this?" My dad asked, eyes hard, mouth tight. "Cutting us off." I took a breath, steadying the storm inside me. "You left me behind a long time ago. I'm just making it official." "You're being dramatic," my mother snapped, then immediately softened her tone. "Sweetheart, we were only trying to help you. We thought Michael was a bad influence." "Stop," I said, louder than I meant to. Heads turned. I didn't care. "You tried to destroy the one person who stood by me when no one else did." My dad looked away, jaw clenched. My mom dabbed her eyes with a tissue, her voice trembling. "We were scared you'd leave us. You made sure I did." There was silence. Awkward, painful silence. I stood up. "This is your last warning. Next time you violate the restraining order, I won't just call the police. I'll make sure everyone you know understands exactly what kind of people you really are. I have the resources now to make your lives very difficult if you force my hand. I don't want to do that. But I will, to protect my family." My mother's face crumbled. "Do you really hate us that much?" I turned around, looked her dead in the eye. "I don't hate you. I feel nothing for you. You're strangers to me now, and that's your loss, not mine." I walked out into the sunlight, heart pounding. My phone was already in my hand before the door shut behind me. "Michael," I said when he picked up. "It's done." He was quiet for a moment. "You met them. Alone." "I had to." He sighed, his voice tight with worry. "You should have told me." "I know. I needed to end it on my own terms." There was a long silence. Then, "I'm proud of you, Ava. I wish I'd had the courage to do it years ago." That night, I packed a bag and stayed with Michael, Jenny, and little Lily at their hotel. Just to be safe. When I arrived, Lily ran to hug me. "Auntie Ava," she squealed. It was the first time she'd ever called me that. I nearly cried. Jenny pulled me into a hug too, whispering, "I'm proud of you." Michael just squeezed my shoulder. That meant more than words. The next few days were tense. We waited, wondering what our parents would do next. But nothing came. No calls. No texts. Just silence. Eventually, Michael and Jenny went home. They changed their locks, installed security cameras, and decided to sell their house. I returned to my apartment, back to work. Weeks passed. Then a month. Still nothing. Marcus kept in touch. He said our parents had returned to their home state. The restraining orders were holding. "Stay vigilant," he said, "but start moving forward." Slowly, we did. Michael found a job in my city. Jenny enrolled Lily in preschool. They bought a house 20 minutes from mine. Every Sunday, we had dinner together. We started creating new traditions, a new version of family. One rooted in choice and mutual respect, not blood or guilt. And as time passed, something strange happened. I stopped expecting the phone to ring. I stopped checking the peephole. I stopped bracing for impact. I started sleeping through the night. 6 months after that confrontation, I got a letter. It was forwarded by Marcus so my parents wouldn't know where I lived. At first, I almost threw it away. But curiosity got the better of me. It was short. No excuses. No gaslighting. Just a simple acknowledgement. They'd hurt me, failed me, were getting counseling, and would respect my decision, even if I never wanted to speak to them again. Michael got a letter too. We talked about it over dinner. Wondered if it was sincere. Wondered if it changed anything. Neither of us had an answer. But we agreed on one thing: our healing came first. I kept the letter, not because I was ready to forgive, but because it marked something important: my parents finally recognizing my right to say no. My right to choose my own peace. Last week, Lily turned 4. We had the party at my apartment. Balloons. Fancy cake. Presents stacked high. Lily running around in a sparkly dress, her laugh echoing through the rooms. Michael grilled on the balcony. Jenny took pictures. The place was alive. At one point, I stepped into the kitchen for a breather. I watched them through the doorway, Michael twirling Lily, Jenny laughing, my apartment bursting with love. I thought about the note I'd left on my kitchen counter 12 years ago when I first moved out. You'll figure it out. I had. Just not in the way they meant. I figured out what love was supposed to look like. What family meant. What I deserved all along. I still go to therapy. Still have days where the fear creeps in. Still flinch when I hear unexpected footsteps outside my door. But I'm healing. We all are. Building something new. Something stronger. Something chosen. People ask if I'll ever let my parents meet Lily. If I'll forgive them. If we'll ever reconcile. Maybe someday. Maybe never. But I'm not defined by what they did to me anymore. I'm defined by who I became after. By the family I chose.